Is it going from bad to worse for Spurs at the moment?
Yeah, it don't look good. I mean, obviously the fans are feeling it more than anyone. It's your club is becoming a laughing stock.
Is it? Are Spurs becoming a laughing stock?
Yeah, and they shouldn't be, because finished fourth last year in a very competitive league. Still fourth this year. There's a few teams just behind with games in hand. We know all about that. But they're in a decent position. It's because they haven't won a trophy again, and likes of Arsenal and the Chelseas and all the local teams, they shove it down the Tottenham fans' throats. They need to start winning something or start producing some players. Their recruitment's been very, very poor. They can't seem to recruit a manager what can last. Not only players, the scattergun approach regarding the players, what they're investing in. And it looks like they can't even pick a sporting director. They should have done a due diligence on this guy. It's historic what we're talking about here. The misdemeanors what Paratici's had. So they should have known about this.
Do you think a club like Spurs and other clubs, but you're of course closer to Spurs, do you think they need sporting directors? Do you think they need that extra layer of people that are put into a club to do? I don't really know what they do, but
it depends. I've been in football clubs and I don't know what they do either. So I think it's different at every club. Some clubs will use them differently to others. Different titles: managing, sporting director, director of football. I mean, whatever their title is, what are they actually doing? Are they accountable?
Are they always football people?
Predominantly not. I would say more often than not, they are academics who speak the same language as the owners and the board of directors, which is a real problem to me, because when you're a manager, you want to speak on the same level. And unfortunately, there's a lot of times you can't even have the conversation, especially when these foreign guys are coming into the Premier League and not even knowing the league. I think Cheeky at Man City is a different example, because they brought him in first, they put some infrastructure in there, and then the icing on the cake was the genius that he's Pep Guardiola, what they brought in, because they worked together before and they know they work hand in hand. Now, a lot of these sporting directors and managers, it's okay when they first walk in the door, they're all high-fiving and they're all happy days. As soon as they start losing, then the sporting director says because the manager's not getting the best out of them. And the manager's saying it's because the players, what he's delivered me, are not good enough. So you can't win. And it's a very difficult situation to be in if you're an owner of a football club, because who are you actually trusting? You trusting your manager, or you trusting your sporting director, or you trusting the host of agents who are picking up the phone and telling you what you should be doing? You have to have full belief in the people you're employing, and I think it's very difficult for owners to do that, to have that trust in who they're bringing in.
So when you were at Aston Villa, you had a sporting director there?
I didn't at first, and I felt like we didn't need it at the time, because the objective at the club from Randy Lerner, who was the owner, was to stay in the Premier League, and I felt that we could do that with the group of players we had when I first went in there, and we managed to have a good cup run, get to the cup final. And then the following season, I felt if we kept the players, we'd stay in the league again, but they had different ideas. I went with Randy to speak to 3 sporting directors in Holland. I can't remember the guys' names, and it was very difficult to talk to them about football.
Well, when you say to speak to 3, one of them will get the job. It was like an interview.
It was an interview process where he wanted me to sit down with him. I already told him that I didn't think it was totally necessary. He said after the first interview, and he saw how I wasn't disrespectful in any way, but I showed probably a lack of interest. He come to me and he said, "You're not buying into this, are you?" I said, "Not really. I think I can cope and give you your objective by just keeping what we've got, and I could deal with it." Unfortunately, a couple of months later, behind my back, he brought in a sporting director, and he introduced me to him. He said, "This is a guy who's going to head up the medical, head up the sports science, head up the recruitment and the PR. I mean, the jack of all trades and master of none. That's exactly what they are. Not all of them, like I say. You get the cheekies of this world, very far and few between, who come in hand with a manager. But when they're brought in from behind your back, it's very difficult to have a working relationship, especially when they have different ideas on recruitment, and academic people who are just sold the idea with their pie charts and their grids and the justifications to the academics who are making the decisions and putting their money into the club. but it's completely alien to any football person to understand. So very difficult situation and really hard to make work.
Well, let me ask you then, you're of course a former player and a manager of Spurs. What do you think the Tottenham fans want from their team?
I think first and foremost, the Tottenham fans, we know what they historically what they want. They want to win. They want to win. It's been far too long, but they demand a certain style of play, how the team plays. And it doesn't have to be that sophisticated. It's just on the front foot and have a go and try and win games and not just set out just to draw games and see if you can nick it on the break. Now, they would suffer playing horrendous football. It's not been a pretty watch, certainly with Jose Mourinho and Nuno and Conte. But when the teams were winning, and they were top of the league with Jose Mourinho, no one was saying anything, because it was, well, we can sacrifice that because we're winning games. And he's absolutely right. But when it all goes wrong and they start losing games, then everyone just points at the style of what they're getting entertained. They're paying a lot of money for their tickets, and it's not working out. So I think what they want is an identity to their football club now. They look down the road at Arsenal and they see a host of top draw young players coming through their academy and a recruitment which seems to have been correct over the last few seasons, bringing in Jesus, bringing in Zinchenko, Jorginho, for one reason, because they want to win. They want to win the Premier League, and they brought in 3 players there who know how to do it. Now, when have Tottenham ever gone out and bought players like that, of that ilk? They haven't done it because they can't afford to keep wasting money on average players. But Arsenal can afford it. You know why? Because they bring their academy players through. They cost a square root of 0. That's what they cost. And some of them are their top players.
A lot of that is down to how long the manager is going to be there for, right? Because if you get the gig at Spurs, whoever comes in next, right? Yeah. The fans and the owner will demand success as soon as possible, right? Because quite often I hear the phrase, the manager's not given enough time, right?
Yeah.
So if he's got the option to pay for ready-made players, or bring in a player from the youth team that he could develop over the next 18 months, he might not be there in 18 months.
Yeah, but it's not always the case. I mean, that's exactly what managers say. You're correct, Andy. That's exactly what they say. They say, I haven't got the time for that. I need to here and now. I need to win. But what I would say to their managers, and what I have said to them in the past, that the 50, 70, 100 million pound player will let you down as well, and it's quite evident they do. But when you cut that academy player in half, he bleeds the colour of the football club. He really cares, and he cares more than the kid who's come in from the outside. So it's a misconception that they will let you down. The only players who let you down are the kids. It's not the case. I think you should be a mix. Of course, we want the best players in the Premier League. We want the best players in the world. What we don't want is mediocrity blocking up pathways for our young players.
talkSPORT Drive with Andy Goldstein. Monday to Friday afternoon from 4 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.